spread out, and we want to start to alternate, right? And we want to start alternating our arms until we bring them out front, just like this, right? And then we can go right over left as we cross midline. I like to start different trainings and workshops I do out like this too. And then we can go back again. Once we go wide, we go back again and do right over left as we cross midline, right? And you'll be surprised, some people tend to bring their elbows in automatically without thinking, right? So you want to be mindful of that. You also want to be mindful of when you come out of crossing midline, that you're not going the same way. That your hands are not going the same. Some people will automatically come out just like that, right? Or there might be some dyskinesia in the left hand or the right hand. In other words, one hand is smooth and the other hand is just really kind of rough.
So what is this one doing? Is this activity you're just describing doing the same thing similar to what the gargling and others are doing?
No, this one is actually working the cerebellum and the left and right hemisphere, just as this one is doing, right? Because our cerebellum is responsible for a number of things, including coordination, but not only coordination of movement, but coordination of our thought processes, coordination of our buccolingual movements, the muscles of the mouth and tongue, coordination of our left and right sides of our bodies. And so there are ways that we can work these areas of the brain that have create facility in other places, of our lives, things we need to do, right?
Yeah, this is really great. So far, I have the the gargling technique to trigger the gag reflex as you're saying, to stimulate the parasympathetic. And based on what I understand you're saying is that this is the part of the brain that's responsible for the resting and the digesting. Is that right?
Yes.
And so I'm assuming anytime we're stimulating the parasympathetic, what that's meaning is that we're reducing our cortisol level. Is that what's happening?
We're stimulating the area of the brain, upper brainstem really, that is responsible for being able to counteract these cortisol and other corticosteroids that are beneficial, but entirely destructive if they hang around too long.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the first, the hippocampus, which is responsible for our memory and our learning, is extremely sensitive to cortisol, right? It needs it because, it helps with our circadian rhythms, our clock, right? As well as the hypothalamus. But we just don't want it to be around too long, right? It can degrade tissue.
So you said the hippocampus is responsible for memory and learning?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I think there's some workshops we attended before around, how when you're constantly under stress, you forget things easily. You're much more forgetful, and it sounds like it's connected to the hippocampus.
Absolutely. There's an area called Pepez circuit that helps to transition what we get in short-term to long-term learning and memory. And that is absolutely affected by the over-release and the maintenance of cortisol and other destructive corticosteroids.
Wow. And I recall, I want to share just briefly, I watched it was a documentary or some sort of video with Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he was talking about in certain cases, for example, before a patient goes through a kidney transplant, they'll introduce a high level of steroids, like stress agents, to the system as a way to shut down the immune system, so that way it can receive this foreign object into the body, so the body doesn't reject it. And so you're trying to make the connection around increasing stress, shutting down immune system. And you spoke about that so well, how we can't properly have a strong immune system, particularly in this what's happening now if stress is not managed in such a way that we are protected, right, from that.
Right, right. And you mentioned Bruce Lipton. I love Bruce Lipton's stuff. You know, biology of belief and, you know, power of love. And I mean, he really makes a fantastic case for the power of perception and its impact, how we perceive at a DNA level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so powerful. I mean, even earlier you talked about, particularly Black folks and the, not only, I like how you described, what we're experiencing now in the midst of the quarantine, but also, pre-COVID-19 to pre-quarantine and this consistent trauma, consistent stressors. Um, and I can't help but make the connection with high level stress with high sugar food diets. Like that's just such a clear connection there. And so, I mean, even in the work that we do with Healthy Black Families, we do a lot of great healthy eating, nutrition, education work as a way of
yes,
maintaining well-being. We find that also it's very challenging to tell folks, put down the fill in the blank food item without really clearly talking about stress and trauma, right? Because sometimes we're eating our emotions.
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So how do we think of ways to address what's happening, these things that are out of our control,
Hmm.
and instead of going for this food item that's kind of this soothing, source, and what we see as the only thing we feel like we can control right now is this donut in my mouth or whatever. um
Right.
I think I mean, I don't want to answer the question, I know you're the expert here, but my guess is that there's this perception dynamic, right? Is it really a bear? And yes, it is the bear. Or do you see it as is the bear that's attacking you? But not only that, a lot of times we hear this common analogy of, if you're in the woods and a bear is attacking you, then that's something you definitely want to have fight or flight, because you want to get away from that situation that's threatening. But when the bear is always there, whether it's perception or reality or combination, what do you do then? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of kind of perception, mental, the way we see things have to be reframed, but then there's a reality that there's a lot of stuff that we are experiencing as Black folks globally. Um,
Yes.
so how do we maintain that balance of being real with what's actually happening, but also maintaining our sanity in the process?
Well, I'm gonna humbly push back on my expertise a little bit, because I think it's a collaborative expertise. There's no doubt expertise that you bring to the table and that your your organization brings to the table, and we're all learning, in this process. I'm very much a student of Black psychology, and I'm very much a student of the brain and neuropsychology. Uh, Happy when I can get something right. So,
Humility.
what I do want to say is that you know we have to, and I'm going to use have to. We must um, recognize what we have. Recognize our strengths and what we have to work with, because we can only work with what we have to work with. When I was, before I even got back in school, I took a 7.5-year hiatus and found myself in Los Angeles, moving from Chicago with 3 children, single father. And I knew that nobody I knew was inheriting anything anytime soon. Everybody in my family was pretty much broke and struggling in terms of, dollars. And the only thing that I really had at that time to my name that I could see was dreams. Was this space in between my ears, and I could be broke, but nobody could stop me from dreaming. No one could stop me from imagining what a better life would be. And I have to tell you, I ran into the work at that time of and I had listened to a number of different scholars, from um, Minister Farrakhan to Owusu Sadakai to, you know, any number of other folks, right? And I ran into Raoul Neffer's work on the Metru Neter and just started to read that. And one of the things that stood out for me was the ability to meditate and use sound, or heka, words of power, while imagining. And he, in the book, broke down, this was the Metru Neter, Sacred Oracle of Tahuti, Volume 1, and he broke down how this is done and just the science behind manifesting reality. And long story short, what I can tell you is that from that point in time, 12 years from that time, I was literally walking through what I had seen at that time. I can remember having my 3 children. I have 5 children now, love them all. But I had when I had the 3 and was a single dad, I was a single dad for 15 years. And I could remember not having any furniture in the apartment, but we were together. And we did not buy things we couldn't afford. We did not rent furniture. The kids laugh about it today. We did not have cable. We could not afford it. But we used to have a good time when we could have a good time. We would throw on a record. And, you know, it didn't really matter how tired I was at the time because I was going to work and going to school. But when we would get together, sometimes we would just act crazy in the apartment, and we would throw on the record, and I would, you know, take turns with each of them, jumping up and down and dancing and moving them around and all that kind of stuff. And my baby boy, he used to love it. I used to ragdoll him. Of course, he was a middle linebacker in the NFL, so he's way too big for me to do that now. But, you know, we made the best of what we had, and were careful that when we made steps, we tried not to make 2 steps back, right? So that we could keep moving forward. And I want to encourage anyone who's listening to this to understand that, you know, there may be economic strife and problems and issues. Might even be hungry, you know. We're dealing with food deserts, dealing with a lot of stuff. But there's something that you have that's powerful. And a whole culture, counterculture, I should say, has been built around us to make us believe that we're not powerful, that we cannot change our circumstances. And just as, you know, I would not be, if I had heart issues and I was going to a cardiologist and the cardiologist was talking to me and, you know, he was smoking a cigar with one hand with a martini in the other, trying to tell me what I should do, right, to improve my heart, I don't think I would listen to that. You know, I would really seek other advice. So I'm talking to you as a person who hasn't just read about it, studied it. I've lived it. I lived it. I've been broke it in a $3 bill, and you know, really struggled as a single father, and really struggled to put food on the table. Understand that as a man, and I can speak to this as a man, you have something to offer. Your energy and love. And, you know, my children would not, they'll tell you this, they wouldn't trade that time for the world, anything in the world, because it was time spent with them. And if there's one thing that can come out of this shelter in place or quarantine is the benefit of spending time with our children. And although we may overlook how important it is, it's extremely important to them. they may not ever, they may not tell you right now, right? But they will later. Extremely important, just your presence as a parent, as a father. Even if it's sitting down, listen, some of you have children who are seniors in high school and their lives have been totally disrupted by this thing. You know, prom, whatever they do, if they still do the thing over at Great America or Disneyland or with these trips, senior trips and so on and so forth, the dance, all that kind of stuff, right, has been disrupted, and they need to be heard. They need to be heard. You know, high schoolers are really having to deal with a lot in this, and the uncertainty can really end at your doorstep. You as a parent can take that on, right? And let them know that, you know, there's going to be a better, brighter day out of this, and that, you know, we are going to take care of them out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important. I appreciate you. I pretty much answered my next question, which is, you know, what's the best way to support our children? So you mentioned kind of the older, you know, high schoolers, and you know, the importance of spending quality time with children right now, and assuring them and listening to how they're feeling right now, and having a space to express themselves. How do you think we can best support the little ones, the babies?
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's similar.
Yeah, well, it is, except for teenagers, you want to avoid clashes, because you got to recognize, we all have to recognize that everybody's energy is just coming together in one place.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
that's
I told my daughter the other day, I said, I think you and I need to go play some basketball. We need to jog or something, girl.
It's funny you say that, because oh, this is so funny, because, you know, I think we're so used to just kind of, you know, just kind of the family schedule, right? You get up, you get your kids ready for school, or you kind of start your day, and everyone's kind of off doing their thing for the daytime for the most part. And then most time for the family comes back together, right? For the end of the day, dinner time, etc. Right now it's we're all pretty much together most of the time. So that little bit of breathing room, I think, can be a challenge. And one thing I've heard, and we've been trying here in my home as well, is trying to find a way to kind of tag team as much as possible, right? As far as if you have little ones, you have the you know, opportunity to have a, you know, a partner or a grandparent, or maybe not a grandparent this time, but someone with a support person in this case. But what happens in the case where it's pretty much just the parent and the child, or the children? What are maybe some support that parents could be using for themselves during this time?
Great question. Great question. There are a few things that I want to recommend. That we keep busy. You know, really, if it's project oriented or work oriented, that we keep busy and we maintain a schedule. And we maintain a schedule for our children also. That schedule can include silo time on their own with projects, depending on the age. I want to recommend that in that schedule, that there's a daily use of music. There might be a music and movement time. It's so very important. And if a child really is ADHD, we might want to even augment that time, that movement time, on a daily basis, or at least every other day, to communicate with others as much as possible. So in that schedule, to have some time, someone that we can agree with on a scheduled time to check in via Zoom or on the phone, what have you, on a daily basis. And then to also take some time for digital detox, right? I'm sure, Rahwa, you're receiving tons of emails, online resources around COVID-19, texts, so on and so forth. It can be overwhelming. So it's really important to get away from that, and to just zone, you know, even if it's putting, you know, a warm compress over our eyes and closing our eyes, and that might be our solo space. If you can do that, while the children have their own solo space. And then there's time to come back together. This may be a good time also to meditate and to practice mindfulness, to practice really good mental hygiene, because not all families meditate together. We talk about meditation, we know it's important, but it's difficult to find the time to sit and meditate together. But I want to share this about meditation. Meditation is personal. People talk about there's this way or that way to do it. The right way to do it is the right way for you. And it can be 5 minutes. If you're ruminating and it's very difficult to just sit in silence and think about nothing, right? Just clear the mind. Try it for 5 minutes. Try it with or without music, right? Because you may be able to use music, whether it's a slow, evolving sort of Reiki sort of tone music, or something that's more active, like reggae or gospel. If you want to sit in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, listen to that and just focus on only that, right? That's time that we're not ruminating around other things. And so we just increase that time from 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 15 minutes as we go, and as we feel we're progressing with conscious breathing, with awareness of our breath, always with awareness of our breath, right? And so take the time to, in your schedule, try to schedule in some time for meditation. Way easier said than done when you've got small children. I get it. I recognize it. But their meditation time can be very, very short, and it may be active for them, and only creating an opportunity for you to do one thing, and that's to focus on the gospel music or whatever the song is with your child or children. So that schedule thing is very important. And the other thing you already mentioned, and that was to eat well, to eat as well as you can, right? And if you're in a situation where shelter in place represents toxicity for you, if you have a yard, try to take some time to just get out and sit in the grass or look at trees or just be in the environment. Try to do that. And I really want to advocate that if you're in that situation, that you call someone, have a scheduled call with someone every day, right? If there's a domestic violence situation or the opportunity for that, it's important to be connected to someone on a daily basis, either by phone or on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever you can do. I think that's extremely important. Does that somewhat answer the question?
Yeah, that definitely answers. And I would add, for those who, may not have a yard or, be in an apartment of some sort, I would definitely encourage, walking around the neighborhood, getting some sunshine would definitely be worthwhile. Or even if it means open up the window and letting the sun come in.
Yes.
Being as close to nature as possible where feasible right now. And I really appreciate the digital detox piece. That goes back to earlier what I was mentioning about the importance of being mindful of what we're consuming, not just what we're eating, physically consuming, what we're consuming mentally, or we're consuming emotionally, because that definitely has clear influence in how we feel and how we think and how we're able to manage our anxiety and our stress right now.
Yes.
Especially when it means, having times where folks, if possible, our TV is just off during certain times, or the news is just avoided for a certain time, because there's a lot of fear mongering, and there's a lot of triggering happening because of what's happening. And what the challenge is right now is, if we don't watch it in the TV news, we're getting in our social media feed. If we're not getting in our social media feed, we're getting in our text threads. If we're not getting in our text threads, we're getting it because someone told us something over the phone. So we're constantly being bombarded with fear, anxiety, panic, mass hysteria. And that, unfortunately, if we're not careful, can exacerbate, make things even worse. And I
Yes.
really it on just minimizing or avoiding a lot of that as much as possible.
Yeah. And if you're a newsie, right, and you know this about yourself, it's really important to get away from the news. Listen, we all know we have this bigot, pervert, racist, person at the helm of this whole crisis. That's a fact. And that doesn't make any of us feel any better about how this thing was rolled out, or handled, right? It's frustrating for me, right, as a psychologist, to know that Cuba has a potential cure and prevention for COVID-19, but this country is so idiotic in its orientation towards Cuba that it won't reach out for help, you see. And there are those in this country who are calling for our country, as well as Canada, to set aside the garbage and allow Cuba to help poor Black and brown folk, given the disparity in death rates when it comes to COVID-19. So all of that can be entirely frustrating, which means that we have to take some space, take some steps back, and just not look at the stuff, and look at some comedy.
Yeah.
Pull out, if it's Kevin Hart, if it's Dave Chappelle, whatever the cat. I'll go all the way back to George Carlin. I mean, pull it out, Richard Pryor. Laugh.
Yeah.
Very important for mental hygiene.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's kind of the theme here. I'm picking up on, the music and the dancing and the movement and the joy, and the gratitude, right? Appreciating time with family, making the most of it. I think those are really great. Not only just, I would imagine, to what you're saying around the mental hygiene, but also high vibration. And it keeps us at a high energy level where it also has positive impacts on our immune system, right? So it goes hand.
And guess what? It's very African of us. Everything you just said.
I think we naturally, as African, as Black people, throughout the diaspora, we naturally have a tendency towards certain things because that's just in our nature, right? We have a tendency to be in social community. We have a tendency to be very naturally inclined to the rhythm of the drum, and we have a natural tendency to do call and response. So there's certain things we just naturally have a tendency to do, and particularly during this time, I think one thing I really want to caution us is to even what you said at the very top of the call, is to not lose sight of who we are as people, as the African people. And we have the natural tools and the instinct and the inclination towards certain things. It's just we are misinformed on so many levels, and we sometimes in the process forget about our true essence.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think what you shared is such a, so many jewels that you shared during this conversation. I encourage folks to listen, to take notes during listening to this particular conversation, to take heed to a lot of the wisdom and the strategies that were shared here. I think that, it's gonna take us to be very resilient during this time, but I think that's something that's just part of our history and our nature. To know what to do with the circumstances, considering there are a lot of uncertainties.
Yes.
So yeah, I just want to make sure that folks know there is a lot of I just had a staff meeting recently. We talked about just kind of naming what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, and I think that alone, having meditation time, but even just saying that this is how I am feeling, and to be able to release that is very therapeutic as well. And holding space. Even though we're physically distanced, but we're not socially distanced, right? We can use our tools as much as possible to connect as people. But I want to leave some final thoughts if you want to share, and then also how folks can find out about you and your work.
Well, I just want to say Zola up on each other. We need to give ourselves grace and forgiveness at this time, and that we're all trying to do it the best way we can. You know, so let's not try to get into the right way and wrong way, you know, with each other. Just focus on the present, you know, and it's very African to do so, and to enjoy the present. And we have, if you go to pranamind.com, there's a COVID-19 button on there, and Rahwa, that's P as in Pablo, R as in Rahwa, A as in Apple, N as in Nancy, A, and the word mind.com. There's a link for parents of young children and a number of different resources for activities, because you know, parents really need activities right now. They didn't sign on to be teachers and all of that stuff. So there's some good resources there that are free resources they can utilize to engage their children and keep them active, and all of that. And then if you go to our chapter website, I'm gonna pull it up here. Our chapter website, you can, for Bay Area chapter of the Association of Black Psychologists, you'll see also links to our the 5-star program, and that website, and there's also a directory there. We'll be putting up the therapist in residency program on the directory, because we're really trying to work out ways in which the community can contact us if they're in need of someone to talk to. So, and that's Bay Area absci.com.
Right, and we'll also make sure these are posted too when the video goes up.
Oh, that sounds good. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah, this has been very helpful. You know, particularly not only in my role as executive director of Healthy Black Families, but I'm also a mother and a wife, and we have a 4-year-old daughter. So, yeah, there's a lot of kind of you know, all this juggling and multitasking happening. And you're right, parents, you know, at this point particularly have not signed up to be homeschool teachers right now, but also aren't anticipating schools will be shut down and playgrounds. And so
right,
have highly energetic little ones. I mean, you know, and yeah, so it can be a bit much. So I also encourage parents, you know, to tune in to Healthy Black Families, because we'll be putting out information around ways we can engage the little ones, the ones that are 5 and under.
Good.
Around what are some tools we can use at home, some play and learn activities, and also how parents can be supported during this particular time, because that's really key on multiple levels. And I don't want to get too much into it, but we also know the importance of 0 to 5 cognitive development, social emotional development, what that means for a child's well-being, yes, and their performance in school, and what this means for their overall well-being. And so this is really critical time for parents as much as possible to support the little ones and their development, particularly now that schools are shut down.
Absolutely.
So,
and to help them de-stress, that's for sure.
Yeah, to help them de-stress. And also I would encourage parents to allow the flow of things right now, and that things may not get done according to how we usually expect them to get done, but to be able to release some of that, because we are in a very uncertain time. And so it can be a bit challenging to kind of keep everything above, you know, keep all the balls in the air. But, you know, this is probably the time to allow things kind of fall where possible, for the sake of, if you mentioned earlier, our mental hygiene, right, and well-being. Yes.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you once again, you know, Dr. Tony Jackson. We really appreciate your wisdom, your experience, your insights. I know this is going to be a wealth of knowledge and of value for all those who are going to be watching this. And well, you know,
I appreciate you. I always say I'm not wise yet. I'm trying to get there, and tell that beautiful husband and daughter of yours I said hello, Hitep.
We'll do. We'll do. Well, we'll be in touch. And we'll definitely, like I said, we'll post the Prana Minds website, the Bay Area ABSI's website for folks to find out more how you get connected to your work. And I also want to remind people that, as I said earlier, Healthy Black Families is in partnership with the Association of Black Psychologists, Therapists, and Residency Program. And so we do have what's the term that you all use for the providers?
In Ganga.
Ganga, which is one-on-one facilitator, would like to say, who can really guide you through this process. If you're needing some sort of support, if you want to have a phone conversation, a Zoom call with someone to really release some of the anxiety and some of the tension right now, we do have someone who's available to make sure you have your support, your emotional, mental support right now. And so that information we put on our website, we also put it in our e-blast. And so you're able to directly schedule that one-on-one session with our representative Sitar. So we have that available for you as well. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate your time once again, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you. And I appreciate you, Rahwa. I appreciate everything that Healthy Black Family does. Just an excellent organization, really.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we do what we have to do because we know our community, that's what we're about. We're for community, by community, with community. So
Free the land.
That's it. That's it. All right. Take care. Be well.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye now.